Hello, everyone. The following is part of a series of videos summarizing the first year of the Israel-Hamas War. This one focuses on the situation between Israel and Hezbollah, as well as the regional facets of the war and the involvement of the United States in this. Other videos in the series have focused on October 7th attack and the hostage situation over the past year, the fighting in the Gaza Strip, and the humanitarian situation of the Palestinian population in Gaza. Links to the other videos will appear in the first comment below in this video. I hope you find this informative. Let me know if you have any questions or comments in the comment section below. So while the war is the Israel-Hamas War and its main arena of contestation is Israel and the Gaza Strip, the regional facets of the war actually grew in importance over the past year, culminating in the fact that right now most of the focus actually is on the regional aspects rather than the specific aspect between Israel and Hamas. So already on October 7th, Hamas called upon everyone in the region who's part of the quote-unquote resistance axis, that is the axis that the alliance of different militias and actors that object to recognizing Israel, relations with Israel, or that Israel exists, called upon them to join the war as part of the final war against Israel. Different militias throughout the entire Middle East did heed the call to some extent. However, not nearly to the extent that Hamas expected, nor did the other states in the region, at least initially, heed the call of Hamas. Hezbollah was the first to immediately respond. Already on October 8th, Hezbollah started firing rockets and missiles from southern Lebanon, pummeling the northern parts of Israel. These missiles started as a daily occurrence, targeting the entire range of Israel's north. However, one of the things that are important to note is that Hezbollah far from threw all of its weight into the war. Hezbollah had many more missiles and rockets than Hamas has a very well-developed and trained army, and yet it did not throw it into the war. A lot of speculation on why this happened. Several have suggested that Hezbollah was angry with Hamas for not coordinating the October 7th attack with them so that they could have carried it out at the same time. Regardless of what it is, Hezbollah started firing lots of rockets and missiles on the one hand, on the other hand, not throwing its full weight into the war. The IDF immediately started retaliating against Hezbollah, however, similarly, not throwing its full weight into the retaliations, both sides agreeing to somewhat of a hesitant participation and limited rules of engagement. Several rockets were fired almost each day towards northern Israel. Israel also targeted Hezbollah infrastructure and operatives in southern Lebanon, but not further than that. This was the situation for the first months of the war. In addition, the situation led to substantial evacuations in northern Israel. Between 60 to 1,000 civilians were evacuated from northern Israel, and between 60 to 100,000 Lebanese civilians were evacuated from southern Lebanon. On November 3rd, despite monumental pressure, Hezbollah's former leader, Hassan Nasrallah, gave a speech in which he said he'd like everyone to stop asking, when is Hezbollah going to join the war? As far as he's concerned, Hezbollah already joined the war. It joined the war as part of its role to support Hamas, nothing further. He also repeatedly called the war 100% Palestinian, which was his way of saying this is not the regional Islamic resistance axis war against Israel. This is a Palestinian war. He sees his role as being supportive in the war and nothing more. Throughout February and March, as the situation continued with these daily rocket and missile attacks and at the same time increasing IDF retaliations, different actors in the world, primarily France and the United States, tried to put forth diplomatic resolutions to end the situation between Israel and Hezbollah. Specifically, the proposals varied, but most of them included some sort of deal in which Hezbollah would be pulled north between 6 to 10 kilometers, roughly 4 to 7 miles, from the border with Israel up to the Litani River. The Lebanese army, in turn, would deploy along the border between Israel and Lebanon. There would be direct negotiations between the governments of Israel and the governments of Lebanon with regards to any border disputes. And essentially, the aim would be to disconnect the relationship between Hezbollah and Hamas during this war. Throughout those different proposals, the Israeli government at times agreed to them. The Lebanese government at times agreed to them. Only thing, Hezbollah never agreed to them. Hezbollah said that there will be no ceasefire in the north of Israel, in southern Lebanon, until there's a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. If there's a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, Hezbollah will stop the fire right away. Otherwise, the situation is going to continue. While While these initial escalations were more limited, eventually this situation took on its own life cycle, and there started to be increasing fire between the sides in response to different developments. The major escalations started to happen in July of 2024. In July of 2024, Hezbollah fired a barrage of rockets and missiles in response to ongoing developments in the war. One of these, a Falak 1 missile, hit Majd al-Shams, this is an area in northern Israel, killing 12 kids and teenagers. In retaliation, the IDF carried out several different airstrikes. The most high profile of these was an assassination of Fuad Shukr, that is the quote-unquote chief of staff of Hezbollah. In addition to this, as part of these retaliations, the leader of Hamas, the external leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, was assassinated in a detonation in Tehran on July 31st. Israel and the Mossad never claimed responsibility for this. However, it is pretty clear that they were responsible for that assassination. I'll get back to talking about that a little bit later when I talk to Iran's involvement in the war. The situation continued to spiral into August, with both sides increasing, Hezbollah firing more rockets and more missiles every day, carrying out launching larger missiles towards central Israel, and IDF retaliations going further and further north into Lebanon. In addition to this also coincided towards the end of August with the fact that the fighting in the Gaza Strip was starting to spiral down. The IDF had actually announced that the Al-Qassam brigades in the Gaza Strip had largely been dismantled. I refer you at this point to my video on the fighting in the Gaza Strip to learn more what was happening there. But all this meant was that the IDF could turn more of its attention to the northern parts of Israel, to the ongoing escalations with Hezbollah. Then the situation took another turn in mid-September. On September 18th, an attack was carried out whereby the pagers that Hezbollah operatives were using all detonated simultaneously, between 2,000 to 3,000 pagers throughout Lebanon, causing major injuries of Hezbollah operatives. A day later, a similar style attack, the walkie-talkies that Hezbollah had been using, all detonated. Again, the Mossad did not explicitly claim responsibility for this. However, it was pretty clear that Israel was behind this, and the situation continued to spiral further. In addition to this, the IDF began launching major waves of assassinations against the top-ranking officers of Hezbollah almost every day. Another officer, another leader, another officer of Hezbollah was killed. It was very clear the situation was spiraling. At this point, Israel also changed its official war aims, stating that allowing Israeli civilians to return to the northern parts of Israel safely is one of the war aims. Then, possibly the major incident, on September 27th, Hassan Nasrallah, the undisputed leader of Hezbollah and one of the major figures in the regional resistance axis, was assassinated by Israel on September 27th. And between September 30th and October 1st, the IDF began its ground invasion of Lebanon. The Lebanese military then withdrew from the southern parts of Lebanon. Thousands of people are evacuating villages and towns under IDF orders, and fighting has now been taken to the ground in southern Lebanon. Some data on the escalation between the IDF and Hezbollah over the past year. Hezbollah has fired over the past year some 12,400 rockets into Israel, both northern Israel as well as the center of the country. Several hundred of these, according to some reports varying between 600 and 800, were heavy missiles that were fired, well over 1,000 anti-tank missiles, and well over 250 to 300 attack drones have been fired by Hezbollah. The IDF in turn has carried out over 10,900 attacks in Lebanon prior to the ground invasion, which are roughly divided to 4,900 airstrikes and some 6,000 ground bombardments or assaults that have occurred over the past year. As part of the ongoing escalations and the ground invasion right now, the Lebanese Health Ministry has reported as of yesterday that there are 2,036 people that have been killed within Lebanon. The Lebanese Health Ministry does not distinguish which of them were militants, which of them were civilians. Hezbollah has reported that some 515 operatives of Hezbollah have been killed in the war thus far. The IDF, however, has estimated that the number is closer to 800 Hezbollah operatives that have been killed. In Israel, 63 people have been killed as a result of Hezbollah rockets and fire over the past year. There's also been substantial fires and damage that has been caused as a result of the different rockets and missiles that were fired, and several hundred were also injured. Meanwhile, in addition to these escalations between the IDF and Hezbollah, other militias throughout the Middle East, most of them affiliated with Iran, located in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, as well as several other places, have all been very active in the war, and this is where also the United States was involved in more active fighting throughout the past year. Immediately after the war broke out, the range of militias throughout Iraq and Syria, most prominently the Hezbollah and Iraq brigades, which is different than Hezbollah in Lebanon, as well as the Islamic resistance in Iraq, began attacking U.S. bases and firing drones and missiles at Israel, all as part of this regional escalation. The Houthis in Yemen also began escalating their rhetoric about participating in the war, and they made more explicit threats on October 22nd, saying that they are going to start attacking Israel and attacking any ships that have anything to do with Israel that may be coming through the Red Sea. Throughout November, the Houthis did start attacking several ships. A lot of them had actually nothing to do with Israel. They had some tangential possible connection to Israeli business people or something like that. This started to be a threat to international commerce, as roughly 20-25% of international shipments go through the Red Sea, the area that the Houthis were attacking. Since December, the United States, in response, assembled a maritime coalition, primarily with the different European allies, and began intercepting the Houthi attacks in the Red Sea. That situation is still ongoing. There are daily interceptions of drones and missiles that the Houthis are firing at ships going through the Red Sea. In addition to this, between October of 2023 and February 2024, there were over 170 attacks that were carried out against the U.S. bases in Iraq, Syria, and Jordan, and other places throughout the Middle East, all as part of this regional escalation. On January 28th, a suicide drone attacked a Tower 22 outpost in Jordan, killing 3 U.S. service people. In response to this, fearing a U.S. retaliation against Iran directly, Iran ordered their militias to stop attacking U.S. interests. Since then, there's been a lot less attacks of the regional militias against the United States. In turn, many of them have turned to firing at Israel directly, drones, missiles, over the past year. Specifically with regards to the Houthis have fired 180 missiles and drones at Israel over the past year. The IDF in turn has carried out 2 major airstrikes in Yemen. The Houthis are one of the only militias that have managed to fire drones that have detonated in Tel Aviv specifically. Today, marking the anniversary of the launching of the war, the Houthis also sent a ballistic missile that actually targeted the center of Israel as well. This situation is spiraling, and likely we're going to see more of that in the coming months. In addition to this, another major regional facet of the war is the ongoing escalation and direct attacks between Israel and Iran. This started largely as a result of the activity that was going on in Syria. When the war broke out, Iran stepped up its weapons smuggling primarily to Hezbollah, but to other militias throughout Syria as well, going through Syria. The IDF in turn started increasing its attacks in Syria. It was reported that over the past year, some 60 rockets and drones have been fired from Syria into Israel, and that Israel has carried out some 235 attacks against different targets in Syria over the past year. Throughout February and March, the IDF began targeting specifically Iranian targets in Syria, the Iranian Revolutionary Guards that were in charge of smuggling these different weapons. That situation escalated on April 1st when the IDF carried out a major attack in the compound of the Iranian consulate in Damascus. In this attack, the IDF carried out what was then the most high-profile assassination of an Iranian figure, specifically the assassinated Mohammad Raza Zahedi. He was the commander of all Iranian Revolutionary Guard forces in Syria and Lebanon, as well as 2 other Iranian generals and other Revolutionary Guard officers. 2 weeks later, in response, Iran launched its first attack ever in history on Israel. Up until now, while Iran has spoken a lot about attacking Israel, it's always done this through proxies. On April 13, 2024, Iran fired over 350 drones, ballistic missiles, and cruise missiles, all targeting Israel. The attack was done in such a way that most of the projectiles took several hours, sometimes 8-9 hours, to cross over and make their way towards Israel. The vast majority of them were intercepted by a somewhat unusual coalition throughout the Middle East. It was Israel, the United States, and Jordan, but there was also assistance reportedly from Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, and some reports even that Qatar was involved in helping to at least identify and intercept these missiles. Then on April 19th, there was a missile attack that took place in Isfahan as well as in Baghdad and Damascus simultaneously. Most of these targeted Iranian interests, and specifically in Isfahan, which is in Iran, there was an attack that took place near Natanz, the nuclear facilities, targeting the air defenses. Israel never claimed responsibility for that attack on April 19th. However, it was pretty clear that Israel carried it out. And then the situation spiraled down between the sides. However, the quote-unquote fear barrier of attacks between the sides directly seemed to have been broken. Then, as I mentioned before, on July 31st, Ismail Haniyeh, the leader of Hamas, was assassinated in Tehran, in the capital of Iran, when he was actually there for the inauguration of the new Iranian president. In response to that, as well as in response to the increased attacks of the IDF in Lebanon, specifically the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, Iran's closest ally in the region, on September 27th, Iran repeatedly vowed retaliation. On October 1st, Iran carried out its second attack in history on Israel, again launching between 180 and 200 ballistic missiles. This time, the attack was far more serious. Even though it was less projectiles that were fired, ballistic missiles would only take 10 to 12 minutes to travel from Iran to Israel. Each one of those missiles also was carrying between 700 kilos and 1 ton of explosive material. Again, most of these were intercepted by Israel and the United States, reportedly also by Jordan, as well as France and the United Kingdom. Right now, we're in a situation, however, where everyone is awaiting Israel's retaliation. A lot of rumors that this time Israel is going to retaliate directly to Iran. However, remains to be seen how that develops. One other thing that's important to note, on October 3rd, after that attack, the IDF carried out another major bombing in the Dahia region in southern Beirut, targeting Hashem Safiaddin, who was reportedly going to be the successor of Hassan Nasrallah as the leader of Hezbollah. However, an important facet that is related to that is Ismail Qaani, who is the leader of the entire Iranian Revolutionary Guards Quds Force, that is the entire array of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards that are in charge of militias and activities around the world, has since that attack reportedly disappeared. There were some reports that he was in that bunker with Hashem Safiaddin. There were other reports that he had traveled to Beirut for high-profile meetings, and unclear where he is. Reuters has quoted several different Iranian sources as confirming that ever since October 3rd, the contact with Ismail Qaani has disappeared. Other sources in Iran have said that no, he's in good health and in contact. I'm bringing this up right now on October 7th. Unclear if he was assassinated in that attack as well. That will be the most high-profile assassination that Israel has carried out against an Iranian target in the Middle East. However, at this point, that is still in question. Right now, we are all awaiting Israel's retaliation towards Iran, and we'll see where the situation spirals any further. That is my highlight of the regional facets of the war. Obviously, there's much more to discuss, but I tried to limit this to the essentials. Like I said, if you're interested in other facets of the war, check out the other videos in this series. There's a video talking about the hostage situation on October 7th, one about the fighting in the Gaza Strip, another about the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I'm Alon Burstein. I'm a visiting assistant professor and an Israel Institute fellow in the Department of Political Science at Tufts University. Thanks for watching.